This microcredential deals with plant anatomy and physiology and consists of 5 targeted skills. This targeted skill deals with plant reproduction. Plants have developed different reproductive strategies to ensure the continuation of their species. Some plants reproduce sexually with genetic information coming from 2 parents. Other plants reproduce asexually with genetic information coming only from 1 parent. Animal species typically rely on sexual reproduction. Sexual reproduction occurs with slight variations between different groups of plants. Plants have 2 stages in their life cycles: a gametophyte stage, the sexual stage that produces sex cells called gametes, and a sporophyte stage, the asexual stage that sometimes produces spores. Male and female sex cells are haploid because they have 1/2 of the normal number of genetic material, or diploid number, of an adult. The union or fusion of male and female haploid gametes, such as sperm and eggs, result in the formation of a diploid fertilized cell called a zygote. It eventually matures into the sporophyte stage. After reaching maturity, this diploid sporophyte produces haploid spores by a dividing process called meiosis. Haploid egg cells divide mitotically to form the gametophyte. Haploid spores from the sporophyte will travel to the egg cells for fertilization, the diploid phase, and then grow into the sporophyte again to produce more spores, and so on. At first, plants grow through vegetative non-sexual phases of growth that produce both a shoot system and a root system. But once in the sexually reproductive phase, some branches begin producing flowers, often singly but occasionally clustered. Flowers grow on special stalks known as receptacles. Their shape, color, and size differ between species, allowing taxonomists to classify plants easily. The haploid gametophyte stage alternates with the diploid sporophyte during the sexual reproduction process of flowering plants called angiosperms. This process is referred to as alternation of generations. Flowers contain the plant's reproductive structures. A typical flower has 4 main components. They are the calyx, corolla, androecium, and gynoecium. The outermost feature of a flower is its green leafy structures, known as sepals. They collectively comprise the calyx to protect the unopened buds from dust, insects, or other potential threats. The second component, known collectively as the corolla, consists of all the petals, often with vivid colors. Depending on whether or not a plant is a monocot or dicot, there may be more sepals or petals than usual in its corolla. For instance, monocot flowers typically possess 3 petals, or multiples of 3 petals, and other flower structures. Dicot flowers usually feature 4 or 5 flower parts, or multiples of these. The third component houses the male reproductive structures, an area called the androecium. It contains stamens with anthers. The innermost components, the gynoecium, or female reproductive components, include the carpel that is made up of a stigma, style, and ovary. Flowers may possess 1 or multiple carpels to form a pistil. When the calyx, corolla, androecium, and gynoecium are present in one flower, it is considered a complete flower. When the 4 components are not present on one flower, it is considered an incomplete flower. Flowers that contain both an androecium and gynoecium are known as perfect flowers. Those flowers that lack either one of those are known as imperfect flowers. There are 2 kinds of incomplete flowers. Male staminate flowers contain only an androecium, while female carpellate ones feature only a gynoecium. In flowering plants, called angiosperms, pollination refers to the transfer or placement of pollen, the male gamete, from anther onto the stigma, the top of the female structure. In gymnosperms, pollination involves pollen transfer, often by wind, from a male pollen cone to a female seed cone. Once transferred, pollen germinates to form pollen tubes with sperm to the egg cells. They become fertilized and grow into seeds. Pollination comes in two forms: self-pollination and cross-pollination. Self-pollination occurs when pollen from one flower's anthers and its carpels mature at about the same time. Its pollen lands on its own stigma or on the stigma of another flower on the same plant. Cross-pollination occurs when pollen from an anther of one flower is transferred to another flower of the same species, but on a separate plant. Bees are the most common pollinators. Others include various insects, bats, and hummingbirds that can distinguish flowers based on petal color, size, and fragrance. Many plants can reproduce or propagate themselves using asexual reproduction that requires no need to produce flowers, attract pollinators, or find methods for seed dispersal. People use various methods to reproduce plants asexually to create plants genetically identical to a desired parent plant. There is no mixing of male gametes with female gametes. Typically, these plants survive under more stable environmental conditions due to carrying desired identical genes like their parent. Finally, various natural and artificial methods exist to produce new plants. Although asexual plants reproduce faster, they may not be adept and survive as well in a changing environment, as do sexual plants with genetic variation and characteristics.